About 4 years ago, or 5 years ago, Buzzfeed was mostly desktop, and now we're the vast majority is mobile traffic, and a lot of the growth happened through mobile video. And I never really expected video to be a thing that people would do on their mobile phones. There's sound, there's the bandwidth requirements, there's all of the challenges of displaying video. And if you think about that 3 years ago, to me it didn't seem that likely that video was going to be a big thing for mobile. But what's happened in the last few years is video's almost become like HTML. It's become a way of communicating and expressing information, and it's not just one set format. There's 2-second, 5-second little videos. There's audio optional, in-stream Facebook video where you are there. It's almost like a slideshow or showing displaying information where you don't need sound. And then there's longer form video that people are more familiar with. So I think video has really become this new architecture for communication, and that was something that I didn't really expect. And now we're doing billions of video views every month, when we didn't even have a video business 3 years ago.
I think one of the things that's particularly apparent this year is that we're no longer evangelizing mobile, and the amount of times that I've probably stood in front of many of the brands here trying to purvey the wonders of mobile, in terms of not looking at traditional desktop strategies and pushing TVC content into a mobile environment, then wondering why that doesn't elicit the same kind of engagement levels. Is there a sweet spot or a kind of a golden kind of number in terms of seconds, or is it based on brand device? It'd be great to hear from you on that.
Yeah, so we've published thousands of videos now, and we can look at the data across all the videos, and we see that particularly on Facebook, something like 20 seconds to 40 seconds is good length for reach and ubiquity, and then on a platform like YouTube, you can start going longer, and once you get to 3 minutes, people keep watching. So you can go to 5 minutes or 9 minutes and get increased watch time. So we kind of discovered this where we were doing a lot of 3-minute videos, and we found that 3 minutes was kind of a combination of the two. It wasn't optimal for reach, and it wasn't optimal for view time. It was kind of good at both. And the whole market had kind of fallen around these 2 to 3 minute videos, including the branded videos and co-branded videos we make with partners. And it was almost an accident where people were kind of cared about reach and kind of cared about view time, and so sort of found themselves in the middle. And we've split our production to make short videos that are designed for massive reach, for properties like Tasty and some of the stuff we do on Snapchat, and then longer videos that go 6 to 8 minutes that are focused on view time, and they're kind of different things, and we now have production geared towards both.
So the industry is getting quite excited at the moment about kind of viewability and measurements. We've had IAB desktop standards for a while. They're still starting to put in place the mobile ones there. Is viewability just another club that agencies are using to beat publishers around the head in order to pay them less, or is it, how are you dealing with this as a metric?
I mean, we see the difference. Internally we try to have our own viewability metric that we look at, because what we ultimately care about is impact. Like when we have a food video, do people actually cook the food? Or when we do a news story, does it actually change a law? Or when we make entertainment, do people share it with the right best friend and have a conversation about the entertainment? So if we're making stuff that people don't view, it doesn't actually give us impact. So we want to know like how much, the same way an advertiser wants to know, does people actually watch this, and does it drive brand lift or purchase intent or sales? We want to know on our editorial business, is it driving all these kinds of impact that we care about for our readers? And so we see that a YouTube view roughly is about worth about twice as much as a Facebook view, right? And so we can look at that across lots of different viewpoints and say, okay, well, our Facebook numbers are really huge and they're growing quickly. let's divide them by 2 if we want to be honest with ourselves about how much engagement people have because of just the differences in how the 2 companies count views. So I think that kind of work is important. It's also hard to make standards around it because it's such a moving target, right? Like the way Snapchat works when they first launched Discover is different than it works 3 months later or 5 months later. And so if you all of a sudden define a standard, you have to be able to have the flexibility in the standards.
How do you, as effectively a publisher, kind of view, or how do you deal with Adblocking? Thank you. Good.
Excellent question. I mean, everyone really appreciated it. Yeah, I mean, ad blocking definitely is favoring media consumption within apps where the ad blocking doesn't really happen. Right. And so when you look at something like Facebook Instant Articles, in a way, it's giving publishers less control because their content is being served through Facebook servers and living on Facebook. But on the other hand, it's giving publishers inventory that can't be ad blocked in the same way. I mean, not that it's impossible, but it's generally mobile web content that's being ad blocked. Native advertising, it depends. Sometimes the way native advertising is promoted is blocked, but the content itself is not blocked. So once it starts spreading and people are sharing it as content, it no longer is blocked. So you can see sort of lift from still see social lift and sharing to the branded content, even if the ads being blocked. In general, I think you should think from the perspective of the consumer if you are a publisher, and you should say the advertising on your site should be entertaining or engaging or add some value to the consumer. Or if it doesn't, it should not interrupt them. It shouldn't get in front of the content. It shouldn't eat up their data on their cell phone. It shouldn't require pull tons of data from them and invade their privacy. Like if it's not adding value, it should definitely not do harm. Yeah. And then also consumers should realize that the advertising revenue helps underwrite better content for them. And so if it's not that obtrusive and it's generating revenue for a publisher, that should be ultimately good for the consumer. Yeah. But I think sometimes the balance is off, which makes it easier for people to champion ad blocking when the ads are really disruptive and causing harm.
From a media agency's point of view, the lines of blurring of demarcation between the roles of a creative agency and the role of a media agency. Where do you see that mobile has its natural home?
So I think that when I look at the big media companies like the Disneys or NBC Universals, they're mostly focused on broadcast and television, theatrical releases of films. But most media consumption now, or a large percentage of it and growing really quickly, is happening on the mobile device. So there's more and more content. And so the question is, there was this battle over the mobile stack of which chipset, which handset maker, which operating system. Is it going to be Android? Is it going to be iOS? Which carrier are you going to use? All the way up the stack to which apps. And there's a lot of fight over the apps of, is it going to be Facebook or Snapchat or YouTube, and which apps are going to be popular. Now I think you're starting to see content being a differentiation and a more important part of the mobile stack. And a company like Buzzfeed is making content for Snapchat and for Facebook and for YouTube and for Twitter. So our content lives in lots of the most popular apps that are in the mobile stack, and it starts to become a competitive advantage to have great content. So on the consumer side and the editorial side, I think it's the job of Buzzfeed, not the job of agencies. When it comes to brands and branded content, it really has to be a collaboration between people who have expertise about how these platforms work. And we have special expertise because we're publishing so much content organically and editorially. All the view data I was sharing about how people watch videos and what length they should be and how people share videos, that comes from publishing hundreds of things every single day, which is something that you can only do without the weight of a brand where and you're just focused on the consumer and the platforms. And so that's stuff that we're going to have special expertise to do. Creative agencies and media agencies are going to have special expertise about the brand's goals and the brand's strategy and what they're trying to communicate, and going to be the guardians of some of the measurement around outcomes. And so we need to all get around the table and figure out how to each have each party do what they do best. And I think the thing I see in the industry a lot, which is a frustrating thing, is people try to do the thing they do best and then also the thing the other person's doing, you know, like where they say, oh, I want to do this thing that I'm really good at, but I also want more of the business. So these two other organizations, you know, I want their job too, even though I'm not that good at that. And when everyone just kind of can accept what they're actually good at and say, that's what I'm going to focus on and I'm going to collaborate on the other stuff, then I think you have the best outcomes.
What does the world look like for Buzzfeed in terms of the newer devices that are out there? If we start to look at virtual reality being a mainstay in our lives, to the connected car and even the connected home.
VR is one of the top things that people are talking about. And I think partly VR is right now one of the most interesting areas for the tech battle of like what hardware is it going to use, what software is going to stitch it together, how's the content going to be distributed? Is there going to be an app store? Is there going to be more like the web? Is it going to be vertical depending on device? Like how's the content get integrated? But it's mostly a tech conversation right now, and the action has not shifted to content yet. And I think that's generally what you see. Like with mobile video, 2-3 years ago, everyone was talking about, can you get a video to play? And is it jumpy? And is there latency? And all the conversation was about bandwidth and technology. Now all the conversation is about content. Like what kind of videos should you make? How long should they be? What sort of topics should they be? What do people care about? And I think in VR, you're going to see the same shift. It's going to be, for a year or two, you're going to have a lot of discussion about which device is the best, which technology is the best, and then you're going to start having, you know, a conversation a couple years from now about, oh, who's the best at making VR content, and what kind of new experiences can you make, and that's going to start to be more of the debate. And so there's these waves where I think first you start to see the future with the pure tech stuff, and then it moves up the stack to content as the technology gets more stable, and the real artists can start making the content for it.
What keeps you awake at night?
These guys, apparently. I mean, the biggest thing that keeps me awake at night, which is also the exciting thing, it's like a scary thing and an exciting thing, is that we're able to do things now that we weren't able to do a few years ago. And in particular, we're on many platforms now, and we're in many countries now, and so we are learning from what works in one market and then exporting that to other markets. And we're learning at what works on one platform and exporting it to other platforms. So if we have a hit on Facebook video, we're quickly moving it to Snapchat, or we're moving it to YouTube. If we have something that really works in Brazil, we're thinking, can we adapt that and make it work in the UK, or make something similar work in the US? We have lots of great examples of that. But the organizational and technical complexity of doing that is hard. So it's getting people to communicate across geographic boundaries, and getting people to share insights and knowledge about different platforms. It's requiring us to invest in this project called Hive, where every piece of content that BuzzFeed creates shows up in a interface where editors can see it, and it shows how who made the content, what platform was it on, what country was it in, and allows us to then use that knowledge to build things in other markets or other platforms. It's a big investment, and it's one of the things that if we can pull it off, we could build a global cross-platform network that allows us to have advantages in every market and on every platform. But it takes a lot of organizational complexity and a lot of collaboration and breaking down silos. And so that's the biggest thing I kind of worry about, is just the complexity of some of the organizational and operational side of our business.